Whoa, we're back for some Bleach Soul Resonance, and I wanted to talk about useful characters just going forward in the game, useful characters you can pick up or start leveling now, because we do have quite a bit of time before, you know, the big hype celebration of like TYBW drops. Obviously, this is the half anniversary, which has its own level of hype, but if you don't want to pull anymore, which I think people should start tampering down their pulls outside of just using the standard banner, and with at least another weekly reset remaining, if not, you know, a weekly reset and some change, what characters could be useful now to get a newer or returning account sort of buoyed? So let's like take a look at like, or I guess like think to ourselves like, who's coming up? Thrust Ichigo is coming up, so we're going to be getting a Thrust DPS character, almost certainly. A Thrust DPS character, you know, cannot exist solely. What I would say is that if you're getting the Ichigo, you should almost certainly get Mayuri, who is going to be rerunning. We know this. And I think that you can't really afford to miss Mayuri in the current state of the game. That just like goes hands down. So if you miss this character, you didn't want to pull on this character before, and now Ichigo's returning, or is coming out and he's returning, I would pick him up. Another option that you could go with, because the thing is, and here's sort of like an unfortunate reality, unless you really want her, I think we're going to be getting rid of Nelliel within the same span of celebration. So the TYBW celebration in totality will be dropping at least 3 to 4 characters. And with that in mind, I do want to say that I think the character that is most likely getting replaced after the Aizen character, the Gin character, and perhaps even the Kenpachi character is Nelliel. These are just old characters. It's something we speculated on before. But if they don't end up dropping a support, then I would say it has to be Kenpachi. I hope it's not. That's my goat. But I do think that dropping a support during TYBW could be seen as less hype. I think it would be fine personally, but let's say that Kenpachi is replaced by like a Yunohana. You know, who knows? But I do think Nelliel is out. What that means, though, is that you kind of don't want to spend any more resources like Jade, like actual Jade, on this character unless she's just like your favorite. So a character that is, you know, free to play that I would suggest putting some attention into is actually Kaname. Kaname is great. You can see I actually dusted his core stamp because I wanted to level up others, but for a long time, this character was sort of a standard, like a staple pick. His issue is that he sort of doesn't get any supportive bits and bobs from his boundaries. But that does also mean that you don't really need any sort of boundaries. You really just want his core stamp, which you might even just have lying around, and his weapon stamp, which again, those are free-to-play tickets. And he does enough while also not demanding a ton of on-screen time. So do look into maybe getting Kaname leveled before Full Assault, Thrust, True Shikai Ichigo comes out. I think this character is valuable. I think this character does have a place at the table. And I do think this character could make an appeal for being on your team. In that same way, because you're going to have something like Zaya Lapido and Okieta running around. So we've got these two right here, right? So the other character is naturally going to be Yuryu. But what happens if you don't have like a Okieta, or maybe you don't have Zaya Lapido running around? I mean, that's obviously going to be kind of an issue where you're going to need to find a character to fill that slot. And you could use Yudahara, of course. But this Yudahara might be on a different team. Maybe you went and gotten yourself like a slash team. You got Kenpachi and White Ichigo, so you want to use Yudahara there. That's where I would sort of rely on a character like Rangiku or Yachiru. If you were really pushing it, I could say Momo. The reason I don't say Momo directly is just because I do think she is extremely core stamp dependent. If you don't have this one right here, then this character really does not come alive. You can see I actually have an excess of them. But I really like this character. I think she is worth investing in. The great thing that you'll learn about characters like Momo, characters like Yachiru, characters like Rangiku, is that they don't require much in the way of levels or gear. I mean, what do I have on this character? Probably just ult charge. Yeah, ult charge here, and then like essentially nothing else. So it would be a good idea to grab this character as a possible assistant to, you know, your teams. Another one who's worth mentioning is Boundary One Komomura, who gives 40% critical damage just from using his skill. This makes him extremely off-field. So if you're someone who's free to play low spending, all you're really doing is bringing this character in, using his technique, putting the shield on you for 15 seconds, and repeating, right? You're just doing that over and over and getting 40% crit damage for free. It's not going to be the same level, of course, as like a Yodahara or a Mayuri character, but it does mean that you can have a character that, again, you don't really need to put much resource into. I mean, this shield is not dependent on, you know, this Boundary One shield is not dependent on levels or anything. This character could technically have 0 gear and still get the effect out of him. You also will not be activating his battlefield skill at all, so he'll have essentially nothing to do. You won't have to waste time in his ult. You won't have to waste time trying to do damage with this character. He'll simply be providing 40% crit damage, which again is certainly something. But I would, again, going back, if you're going to build any character, like right now you're new, low spending, and you're trying to, or free to play, and you're trying to, you know, figure out what you're going to do when True Shikai Ichigo comes up, I might take this 2-week period to just build Tosin a little bit. You don't have to get him extravagantly like built or anything, and a lot of his stuff is going to be damage, right? It's like, you know, crit rate here. But here's the one you're really going to need right here is Tosin's battlefield skill reduces enemies thrust resistance by 10.5% up to 3 times, so 30% total. Technically it would be 12, 24, 36 total. And this is something that activates a lot, right? You don't really need to go into like, oh, you need to use the ultimate and do everything with him, but he will just be a character who will be able to lower thrust resistance just sort of like naturally by, you know, playing. So again, a character who does a lot of assisting without really needing a bunch of, you know, effort. He's not a very high effort character, not a very on field character either. You just, you know, bring him in and out with battlefield skill and switch him out, which should be enough for buoying True Shikai Ichigo until, like I said, we probably get a replacement for Nelliel. I do think that's coming sooner rather than later. Sad as it is, Nelliel has really been holding down the power of thrust for a very long time. She's very strong, but I just do not see any world at all where they're going to want to rely on a Nelliel who takes up so much screen time, when, let's be honest, we all want to use True Shikai Ichigo. We want to use True Shikai Ichigo in the same way that we're using someone like Grimjo or Okieta, where they're on the field, they're the most important character, and we're not just seeing them like buzz off every like other hit, right? I think that's pretty big. And I think it'll be a little different from like Yuryu. Yuryu being like probably spirit tactic and replacing Aizen. I think it's pretty easy for an archer to be a backline unit and still have effective visuals. I mean, this Yuryu, for example, has a bunch of things he leaves on screen, floats around and does without impeding the, you know, sort of splendor of like the on-screen character. I think Yuryu and Okieta should be fine. They're building these characters with the knowledge of previous characters, so it should be fine. But yeah, I'd say ranking them right now, if you're a new player and you just need to get some characters built for the upcoming True Shikai Ichigo, I would consider Tosin. Nothing more than like level 70, maybe level 80 or something. You could grab Rangiku if you have her, build her up. You could also end up using Mayuri, like I said, if you want to pull for that, but I know some people just really don't want to. Will your True Shikai Ichigo work to the same effect as someone who has Mayuri? I mean, of course not. Mayuri is the best free-to-play, low-spending character in the game, to me. I've said that time and time again, but Rangiku is very good. Again, Tosin will be sort of your stand-in until they release that replacement tactics character, which I think is coming. After that, the most I guess, like, interesting character for just fleshing out these sort of like supportive roles would be someone like a Yachiru or a Komomura. And then if you really wanted to go down, you could start talking about like a Momo. But I wouldn't really put any effort into like a Nemu or anything like that. Komomura, like I said, with one boundary becomes a 40% increase in crit damage, which is completely off field, has like no, you know, persistent requirements or anything like that. So I do think that he could serve a place while you wait for other pieces to fall in line. Again, this is a video predominantly for very, very, very new or, you know, late stage returning players who might not have anything built, and they're just wondering like, well, I have 2 weeks, what should I be doing? I think that would be that'd be my current choice. It would be, because I just think that if they dangle Nelliel or something like that, it's just not worth it. I mean, the difference between Nelliel at B1 and B2 is staggering, and to that degree, you're just not going to get that. I mean, my Nell has a 5 core stamp, you know what I mean? Like, again, B1, B2, you're just not going to get the use out of this character like you think you are if you end up pulling this character. And she's so field dominant, and you just want to be in, like, probably want to be on the field actually just attacking with, you know, Trishikai Ichigo. I would kind of leave this character in the past and just wait. I would. So yeah, pick up Mayuri if you can. Again, Mayuri doesn't really need anything outside of just his core stamp and weapon. His core stamp can be picked up over time, and it is extremely good. There's no understating how good this core stamp is, or like overstating how good this core stamp is. This core stamp is amazing. I would try to pick it up as best you can, like multiple copies, but you know, we'll see, you know, down the line how that goes. And yeah, that's gonna do it, I think. Like, nice little quick one. Just wanted to talk about that because I feel like I see a lot of people talking about how they're just waiting. Should they wait? Should they pull? Should they do this? Should they pull that? Should they build this? Should they build that? My answer would just be get your account stable, get your team stable. You ever play like a roguelite where you lose all of the early fights? Like you're playing like the Bazaar or TFT or something, or an auto battler, I should say, I guess, not a roguelite. And you're like, why do I keep losing all of these early fights? And someone just says, well, why are you not filling out your board? You know, if you're playing Hearthstone Battlegrounds, what do they say? The most important thing is to just get stats on your board before you consider synergies and stuff like that. You need to get the actual stats on your board. That's how I feel with team building in these games, is you just need to get these stats on your board so you actually use the characters. So Tosin, Komomura, if you don't have any other option, if you're just running with, if you have no other support options, if you're just running with Yodohara, I would consider a B1 Komomura. Otherwise, I would consider Rangiku if you have her, or I would consider Yachido if you have her. Momo if you have core stamp dupes. But yeah, that would kind of be my rundown. I've been Lone though. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the club, we'll go make it, and